Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past broadcasts are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We always welcome your questions and comments. Hit us up at DJ@ArtistFirst.com. And now, out to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
She's Margaret, and of the two of us, she looks much better. And welcome to another broadcast of Everyman, where we will be talking about vanities and ottomans and stepladders. No, we will be talking about vanity because vanity is something that is quite ubiquitous in the world today and in people in general. I mean, I think that and I think, Margaret, you said this before we came on the air, and it's important. I think we have to define it because I think people oftentimes associate vanity with bonfires. And no, people oftentimes...
And Valkyries?
And Valkyries, because bonfires and Valkyries, that's a great movie, or maybe a acid rock band. But back to vanity. Yeah, I can feel the hook. Vanity is often associated with the physical. I mean, people think of a vain person as somebody who's obsessed with their looks, or obsessed perhaps with their what people think about them. And that is true. That is an aspect of vanity. But the quote that we're going to put up on the website at some point is from is vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that particular phrase is from the very first, I think the first chapter, first couple of verses of the book of Ecclesiastes, which is one of these wonderful books of the Bible that when you read it, it's actually nearly solid poetry. That first phrase, it continues on with this sort of exact sort of scansion and meter. It's a beautiful book-long poem. In many ways, the way the Psalms are, they're sort of long poems. But in this particular case, the poet, let's say, is opining on not the superficiality of the looks of people, but on really, in essence, the way that we all kind of take ourselves so seriously, or so we as human beings, our vanity is that we consider our existence essential to the universe.
Our existence is essential to our universe.
And that's the exact point of Ecclesiastes, is that vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The all here is the world in the eyes of us, the beholders, and the outsized importance. I'm reminded, this may ring a little bit better. I'm reminded of those wonderful posters. I forget who used to do them, where it'd be like, the world according to New Yorkers, and you see, there's like Manhattan Island. It's this giant, it looks like it's basically half the world, and there's this little dot next to it, Staten Island. Staten Island, and then there's like this strip, New Jersey, and then beyond that, it's like the outer darkness. It's like so the world according to New Yorkers, the vanity of vanities, is that all the world, everything is us. We are the center of our universe, or of the universe, and that vanity, which, yes, a component of it is about, enough of me going on and on about me. What do you think about me? That a component of sort of ego, but it really is this idea that our perceptions are somehow essential and important to the universe as a whole, and that. That's such a quintessentially human conceit. So it's just a lovely thing about us. We really think we're important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the dictionary definition of vanity
Mm.
is excessive pride in one's appearance, qualities, abilities, achievements, etc.
Mm.
Character or quality of being vain or conceit.
Mm.
And that begins with what vanity actually is for us down here, us humans. Because I go back to the thought that we are in this world to interact with others. Again, the American Indians look at it as we are here to dream the common dream. And if you think about it, it means that each individual person has their own dream or their own world that they live in. So how do you begin to share in a dream?
Well, I would stop you right there, and I'll let you go further. But that each individual person has their own world that they live in is the quintessential or the definition of that singular vanity.
Well, that's the interesting part about this. When you realize that you've invested yourself in this concept of you.
I think you should say that twice. That's a really good phrase. You've invested yourself in this concept of you. That's great. Go ahead, sorry.
But the amount of time and energy that you've put into this concept of you, if you think about it, everything you're doing is because you have a concept that you're holding near and dear, that you believe that this is you, which means that there's a whole list of things that you believe is not you.
Right. Well, and I think the lovely thing about that is what you're saying is you're inflating it as well. You're also investing. Investing is also pushing something into a volume. You're literally blowing yourself up.
Yep. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We blow up the idea of who we are.
Yeah.
And if you're honest with yourself, you'll admit it. Yeah, I think that way, and I think that that's really important. And all that other stuff over there is not that important. Like that description you were giving of this idea of what a New Yorker thinks of what the world is. And that's where the phrase flyover country came in, by the way.
Yes. And it's a... Well, I don't want to go into... That's a whole other subject. But when you understand that in your dream state, you are engaging in concepts of yourself, projections of yourself, ideas of yourself. And the interesting part about it is that you're constantly bouncing these ideas and structures off your own soul to see what your soul's reaction is going to be, which is rather interesting, because are you in harmony with yourself so completely that you know exactly where any of this is coming from? In other words, is it a thought that I had, and where did that thought stem from? Was this a thought that I received from someplace else? This response, this feeling was triggered by what? Was it something that I had seen or read or was witness to or experienced? Or was it a physical experience where you realize that, like that sensation of something dropping in the pit of your stomach? We've had that one when you're suddenly in an elevator and it's just going pretty quick. Okay, there's this physical body goes, what? Well, I want to go back. You said something I think that really struck me, and I'm going to go back to it. the idea that you're bouncing these, all this stuff that you're talking about, bouncing it off your soul, or bouncing it off other people as you go along with investing this, vanity is something you bounce off of things like a mirror. And one of the things that's associated with physical vanity is this idea of always looking in the mirror and checking your lookout. Narcissus, who is one of the Greek concepts of vanity, fell in love basically with his own reflection. And there was a whole moral tale that was associated with that we don't have to go into.
He died at the side of the river looking at himself.
Starved to death.
Right.
Right.
Pretty much.
He could not tear his eyes away from his own reflection. Now, we don't know anybody like that. But the idea, though, of bouncing this concept of yourself, off of your soul. In other words, you're letting your soul. You're trying to mirror this concept off your soul and seeing if it agrees, I guess. But I think it's even worse when you bounce it off of other people and say, in essence, what are their impressions of me all the time?
But if I hadn't finished what I was trying to say, okay? When you bounce off these structures, whether they're notions that you've put together in your own head or suddenly some experience has happened, and you're bouncing it off your soul, you're trying to find a resonant point within yourself. The resonance within you will tell you whether it's true or not. But if you haven't taken the time to begin to become more intimate with your own internal, you're going to start bouncing things off outside of yourself, trying to figure out, is that me too? Well, if I bounce it off of this person and that's the response, is that me too? Instead of bouncing it internally and saying, oh, that's doesn't feel right at all. Or, yes, this is absolutely where I've got to hold my line, my resolution. So this is where that development of consciousness has got to step in, so that you become aware of what you're actually doing to yourself and to other people.
I like that sort of. Let's back up a little bit, because what you're saying is that there's a trueness. There's a purpose to vanity. In other words, if you engage in the bouncing of these concepts off of your soul, and there's a resonance, you're saying that you can arrive at insight into your actual soul being.
Well, vanity is when you put too much weight on the things that you've concluded from it. Okay, you're how do I say this? When there is something that you see and you're bouncing it off of yourself, your heart is speaking to you and giving you a response saying, oh, that's just awful. Or, that's wonderful. That lifts my soul. Okay? Taking note of the things that lift your soul is the surest clue on what actually lies within you. Because more than anything else, you want to be intimate with your knowledge of yourself. What is yours? What is truly yours? And what isn't? That seems to be the going question from childhood on up. Is that really mine? Is that really me?
Well, I like, what I'm trying to say is I like that. Well, because we started off with saying, well, vanity is in essence this, people associate a sort of pejorative thing with vanity. They thought if you're vain, that you're as the dictionary definition.
As the definition is that you've put too much weight on something, whether it's your appearance, whether it's a philosophy, a concept. You've invested a lot of your time and energy into something, Okay. Not saying that that's bad, but you have to be aware of what it is that you're doing.
Well, okay. Well, but I'm trying to get a little bit, I'm trying to turn it inside out a little bit.
Okay.
So what I think is that the dictionary definition of vanity, or the way we think about vanity, is it's sort of a let's say a frivolous pursuit. But I think what you just said is that there's a purpose. There's a certain essential role, is what you're saying, for vanity. If we turn it and say what we're really trying to do is use it as a method of introspection, or of testing a concept against truth.
Okay. What I'm saying is that if you do not become acquainted with your own internal, you will flip it outside.
Right. And I think that's more the common concept of vanity.
Right. Well, okay. I guess we're redefining vanity from away from the common.
No. I don't want to go. I'm intrigued, and if we could spend 2 minutes just bounce this off with you.
Okay.
Is that statement that you just made? I'd never heard anybody say anything like that, which is why I'm intrigued. And maybe this is going to hijack the show, but I don't care. The idea of vanity, and the concept of vanities, all is vanity, is that in essence this is a conceit that man puts ourselves into this exalted position that in many ways we don't deserve, and is really a made up thing. Okay. But the idea that there is a utility to this kind of process, which if used incorrectly becomes our vanity, but if used sort of more correctly becomes a way of in essence finding the truth, or the introspection about oneself, is interesting to me. I don't know if the two things can be defined in the same way, but the process of you went right into the process of bouncing this stuff off the soul can actually end up being a sort of a proper use of this process, which can become vanity if you're bouncing these things off of the world, and then thereby investing and inflating this let's say this idea of who you think you are. You're putting a lot of energy investing your concept of self, yourself's concept of self, which is a wonderful way of. You said it better, but if you put the actual soul in the middle, the incarnated soul in the middle, at the core, and then the idea that because vanity is a process of the mind. I would say that the vanity is a process of the ego, of the mind, and that the mind can relate through taking in a concept and properly, let's say, letting it echo against the soul and looking for resonance, is a proper use of this process. Let's call it a process. And the improper use of the process is that the mind takes it and echoes it, instead of against its own soul, or its incarnated soul, against the external, and it becomes a bubble. It becomes something that you say, well, the world wants me to be, to wear this type of eyeshadow, or the world wants me to buy this kind of car, and I've sort of done that, and so now I'm, pushing this bubble out into what the world thinks is great, and now I'm great, and of course these, like all bubbles, can be popped. And the poet of Ecclesiastes is talking about the giant bubble that is no more than full of hot air. But I like that. I just wanted to stop you there and say, well, that's such an interesting way of thinking of that process of vanity as not being something which is I wouldn't say a waste of time, but certainly a turning away from truth into the falseness of what the world thinks about me and what do you think about me, to something that you could actually find a little bit about you, the real you, the core you. It's very interesting. I never heard anybody talk about vanity that way.
Well, it's something that we do as humans, and the culture itself has made it comfortable to embrace vanity. You should be bouncing it off out of against other people. That's what they're holding up as a standard.
Absolutely, especially all the things we see in social media.
Right, and it's good to a point. Maybe that's the best way to put it, because it's a process, and you have to experience it, and it depends on whether or not you get tired of that stuff and realize how hollow you actually are. Because when you keep bouncing on the outside like that, you are not filling your internal with any real consciousness or life force. Therefore, you feel hollow because you haven't invested in really getting to know what is right in the core of you. What is your heart telling you? And it's not, when I say heart, it's not just emotions. Most people think, it's like, no, deep, very deep.
Again, I have to stop you because you're just doing concept after concept, which is like blowing my mind. So this idea of hollowing out oneself by pushing it into this bubble of vanity is a wonderful way of thinking about that, because you're suffocating yourself and you're denying. The bubble becomes the surface through which all things must come. And the bigger it gets, the more hollow you are, because it is a surface. Vanity, here's a concept here. Vanity is a surface thing. We all know that. Vanity is a surface. And to throw just a tiny bit of math out there, the larger a surface area you have, the harder it is for you to get things in and out of the volume contained. Just think of it as a giant beach ball. The bigger the beach ball is, the harder it is to get things into the center of it. So if you have become a giant beach ball of vanity, which is a concept in and of itself, because that's what the social media wants you to be, this giant beach ball of vanity, or this giant, monstrous thing, which in all cases is looking outward and is reverberating off the surface you keep pushing outward. You're starving and suffocating the true core you. And that's a wonderful way of thinking about vanity. It is exactly that. The more you feed an ego, the bigger it gets.
I'd say everybody would agree with that.
Yes, and egos are hungry things.
Well, they continually wish to expand. A random thought just came in my head.
Go for it. You've been golden tonight.
Well, if you look at the way science has been approaching the expansion of the universe and how it does not stop, it just continues to expand.
You did say random. Keep going.
I'm wondering if that theory is a result of the fact that all we're doing is expanding that mental concept. And all the research is being pushed and pushed and pushed in that direction. But you're not coming back to the core.
You're saying that the size of the universe is man's ego? Wow, that's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
I like that. I don't think we have time to go into that. But that's really good. But in fact...
if you really wanted to go down that thing, we could start talking about membranes and membrane theory.
All right, to bring things back to the personal. So this is very interesting, though, that the vanity, the concept of, the process of bouncing stuff off of and investing in can be positive if you're bouncing stuff off of your true core, your true soul incarnate, and letting the mind learn things about the soul through this process. This is actually I think a correct, or certainly it sounds like a process which would reward rather than empty. And if you, and in one way, vanity is also called falling in love with yourself, right? As Narcissus did and starved himself to death. But if your mind falls in love with your soul, and it trades those two things back and forth, I think this is information or rather a process which informs both. The soul is informed of the external partially through the mind. The mind is what interacts with all the stuffy stuff down here. The body does as well. So the soul is incarnate, and therefore through the mind and through the body, it has these extensions into the physical. Okay, and so this process, which if not turned to the outside, to the external, of the ego to the core. And there's also the bodies to the soul. When your body and your soul are interacting together, you feel whole, you feel wholesome. So there's that too. That's sort of a vanity, if you will, of the body interacting to the soul, so that you know what your body needs at a core level. That these internal feedback processes tend to inform, like a good feedback process does. But then turn it outside, and it's an open loop. I'm using a term which is familiar to people who have a little bit of control. They have the idea of control systems. An open loop means that no matter how hard you push it, it keeps taking. And so if you turn your ego investment into the outside world, you can blow up that balloon as large as large as you want. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say the language does inform. It is a control system.
It is a control system.
Mm-hmm. Because when you feel that you are at sea and you don't have a ground or a core, you are going to try to control everything around you. And that is usually the first step to come to the point of realizing that you've got to be aware of you as a whole. Or if you switch it to energy in terms of who you are, what parts of you are speaking. You have different energetic spheres, like your mental sphere and your emotional sphere, as well as your physical sphere, and being aware of how the body actually functions and the feedbacks that come in. A lot of people just ignore their body. They don't listen to it at all. And it's always telling you something, but you're really not listening until it's something like, I'm hungry. But each one, if you want to break it down in that way, maybe the best way to think of it is you have vanity of the body concept. You have vanity of the mind constructs. You have vanity of your emotions. It should be, shouldn't be, and it's, some people they don't put any kind of structure for their emotions. It's just, they're going to ride whatever wave happens to be rising up in them. And just like, but your consciousness has an oversee of it all. It's understanding that there's a part of you that can oversee all of this. And there's also vanity of the spirit, which usually comes into terms of mental. Because if you are in spirit and in that connect, there is no vanity. You just are. I am.
And I love that, because in essence the other thing that is important here is that being states are not vanity ever.
No.
And vanities, all the vanities are sort of a mental or a construct state. Even if you're using it to have the mind inform the soul in sort of a positive way, and the soul inform the mind, it's still not necessarily a being state. It's a sort of an active state. So we've kind of teased some interesting things out of Vanity, and I didn't think we would get here. This is sort of fun, but I like very much that the idea that there are various levels and forms of vanities, and I think maybe we'll take a very conceited break, going back to the studio, and coming on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about these different forms of vanity, because I think we got a lot to talk about here.
Mm.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the 4th largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is book 1 of the adventures of Deucalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And tonight we are talking about our egos and how big they are. No, in some ways we are. We're talking tonight about vanity, and the first half hour we kind of sussed out a couple of very interesting things about vanity. One of them, I think, perhaps the most interesting, is that in essence the vanity that we're talking about, we kind of found that there's both let's say a vanity which is externally focused, and which is probably the one that we're most familiar with as human beings, this idea of somebody who's puffed up and very full of themselves and has this very sort of expansive and sort of hot air kind of look at the world, and that is sort of the classic definition of vanity. And then there's this idea that you could use a similar sort of purpose, a similar sort of process rather, as a way of letting the core of you, let's say the soul, the incarnate portion of you, become more in touch with the let's say the ego portion of you, or the body portion of you. So that was interesting, and I don't want to reprise that, but don't miss the first half hour. Go back and listen to it. But this half hour, I think that you mentioned it right at the bottom of the hour there, about the various types of vanities, all these different vanities, and let's go into that a little bit more. You mentioned a few there. Let's talk about those.
Well, the vanity of the body is most familiar for us. The vanity of, oh dear, my body is aging. You're losing hair. You're going gray. Your muscle tone you're losing, or whatever. But you're seeing that the concept that you had of your physical body is not what it was.
But let me just put one little thing into that. I think that in various cultures, the changes of the body can be seen as natural, normal, and necessary. In other words, the idea of vanity seems to be contra-natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's based on culture, what your culture is expecting of you. I mean, this culture in general is more youth-oriented. You're supposed to be more active, more virile, more everything. And it doesn't want to grow old, as opposed to embracing the fact that this is a process that your body's going through. And if you understand that, you will embrace every step of the way.
So is there the component here that makes it vanity? Is a societal? I mean, if you, let's just say, take this back. If we put a human being by themselves on an island, they are going to grow old. They're going to age, and without any external judgment, it is just a thing. I am small and helpless and young and immature, and I grow through all my stages of life, and in each one, my body, the physical, changes. I grow, I become stronger, I become taller, I become fatter, whatever. All these things as you go through the life, and then it ends. So there's a physical, there like a tree growing from a seed to a giant oak, and then falling down and rotting in the forest. This is just that we don't look at a tree and say, oh man, that tree could be so much thinner. You know what I mean? God, that's a fat tree. Or by the way, even our pets, we're perfectly happy to spoil our cats and dogs and make them as fat and roly-poly, and they don't care. They're like, I'm just as fat as anything. I just barely get through the door. Yeah, this is great. I want some more treats. Because there's no vanity there. The vanity is almost it's a judgment system.
A human thing.
And it's a, I don't like X because X is being judged lesser than, or vanity does have this external judgment component. It has to.
Mm-hmm. And, if you are an athlete in any way, shape, or form, you're expecting a certain level of performance from yourself. There's concepts of what you feel is where you should be.
I like that, but as if there's a utility to it, I think there's something like as an athlete, it's not vanity to want to be at your top shape because you're trying to accomplish something. Vanity seems purposeless as well.
Well, what I'm trying to say is if you understand the mechanism behind what we're talking about, the concept of where it should be, for an athlete, they will take into account their body. They know their body. They know what their limits are, and they also know and feel when things are shifting and changing. If you are truly a professional athlete, you just take that all in stride. You understand that this is where I'm at. But that is contact with the outside world. Your physical body is the vehicle by which you interact with your physical world. So it is part of who you are.
Right, but I liked where you started with the various types of vanities, and the physical vanity is this idea that you want it to be forever young, let's say. But it's what I'm trying to say is it seems to have this societal component, and it doesn't seem to have utility. There's no utility to being forever young. It's sort of a railing against reality.
Mm-hmm.
And in its essence, it then has a core of falseness, and that's what I'm trying to get to.
It's not grounded. It's not real.
It's not real, and so is that a? So I'm trying to get to. Is that a component of all vanities that they have some component of falseness to them?
I guess there are degrees of it depends on how well you know yourself. I go back to that.
Mm.
All right, we were talking about the different ways vanity appears, and your physical is the one that most people are familiar with. There is mental vanity.
Now let's talk about the next one. You mentioned 2 or 3 of them, but yeah.
And the mental vanity is that you are constantly forming in your head ways and concepts that you feel are applicable to the outside world. This is where you're going into a couple different ways. You can go into theories and law when you're thinking of science, but you can also go into different philosophies. Oh, Lord, if you want vanity.
I think you struck upon it. Let's say science has a thing that cuts vanity, and that's the reality. If you do it correctly.
If
right?
you agree to the scientific method. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who do not want to do that.
Well, let's say that if you don't do it, then you're moving more towards a philosophy.
Right. The line is getting blurred between what a theory and a law is and what a philosophy and a religion is at this point.
Right.
Because the rigidity, it's understanding that there are rigidities of thought that you set up in yourself. And do you know what those are? What is the structure in your own brain, in your own head that you've set up to be able to interact with your outside world? There are foundations to all that. And the vanity is, well, I know the way the world is supposed to work, and you all are supposed to listen to what I'm telling you.
And the key word there is supposed.
Right, exactly. And understanding what suppose actually means.
Well, what I really like about what you just said, I'll just say it, is that let's say if a mental concept allows a reality check, We always talk about reality checks, but science, true science, is about reality checks, because you do have the supposed part of science, which we call a theory. You say, I suppose it works like this, and then let's try it, and then reality check, and we go back. Nope, doesn't work that way. But when you stray into vanity, you stray into, let's say, ideology or philosophy or dogma, where in essence the ego or the mind is saying it's supposed to work this way regardless of reality. Well, no,
yes. It's true. It's
regardless of reality. So in essence, the vanity is that you put yourself above the truth or above the reality, and that's where the vanity comes in. I think this is the common theme here a little bit. Like, I love common themes. Go ahead. He said with great vanity. Go ahead. So, this is good. I like this.
Well, and then you have the vanity of your emotions and your emotional body. And I think one of the greatest vanities is, well, you made me feel that way.
Oh, my God. That's beautiful. Go ahead. That's great. You made me do that.
Well, you made me feel that way. And you're sitting here going, what? Am I possessing your soul here so that you can feel this?
Oh, but that's exactly what they're saying, is that in essence, they're emotional vanity. Go ahead. You have it right there.
Well, if you just thought about that for a second and just bounce that sucker right off your own heart, your own soul, it's like, no. I feel what I feel. So why am I accusing you of making me feel this way? Here's a question.
Yes.
And it's understanding that you got triggered at that point. You were triggered into that emotion, and you want to blame somebody else, but you can't feel something unless you've given yourself permission to feel. So how did you give your permission to that, to dominate you and control you into feeling that? You have the ultimate control.
Oh, so, but to back up, so emotional vanity is the idea that your emotion is a artifact of someone else's actions or feelings rather than owning it. The reality of your emotion is, I'm angry, and we've talked about this before, it's just being angry. The fact that you're triggered, that the anger rises, that you recognize the anger, and you just say, okay, I'm just going to, as the wonderful monk said, I'm just going to sit in my anger, I'm going to sit in my fear, whatever it is. But the emotional vanity is, I'm triggered, I'm angry, it's your fault. It's you're making me.
And the minute you do that, you've given that other person the ability to change you. You haven't taken control of your own changes. You agree to a manipulation.
Or you attempt to manipulate through your...
If you reverse it and you're the one that's trying to trigger other people, yes, then it becomes a control system.
Right. But I think the third one is if you say you're making me, and so then you say, well, you try to, in essence, control the other's behavior. So you don't do that to me. You're doing this to me. Stop doing. So this control system, this externally facing control system, is that rather than what's the right one is, I am angry. I'll sit in the anger, and then it will go away, and you'll feel better, and life moves on. The control system is, I'm angry, and it's your fault, and you have to stop, and you have to do things that make me happy, or I will be unhappy, and then, Right. So that's the vanity of emotion.
Yes, it is the vanity of emotion and the vanity of relationship.
Yes. I think, interestingly enough, you started in the beginning of the first half hour about the dreaming the common dream. I think all the vanities that we just talked about, the physical vanity, the mental vanity, the emotional vanity, are antithetical to the idea of being in relationship in the common dream. They're all toxic to relationship. Physical vanity is toxic to the relationship of the common dream. The mental vanity is toxic. The emotional vanity, I think, is what people really find. That's, this to find someone who's stuck up and emotionally vain and needy and controlling and domineering are all toxic.
Well, it goes back to that analogy of the giant balloon or the beach ball. There's nothing in the center except emptiness.
And I think with emotional vanity, it becomes not just a giant balloon, but something which explodes. When people have these landmines of emotional vanity, and they're triggered, instead of introspecting it and saying, "Oh well, I'm angry, and I'll be less angry, and I'm okay now, and it's all right," it's boom, it's your fault. Boom, we run around,
Well, it's because what is embraced is the emotion instead of embracing your consciousness. The emotion is a wave that rises up. It is an energy that rises up. Okay? You, as a conscious being, have the ability to manage it. And if you give over to it, that's when you become possessed by that energetic, whether it be anger or rage, etc., etc. Consciousness is one of the keys to be able to come back into balance and being grounded.
Let me stop you right there. Are all these vanities a way of ungrounding consciousness, or moving away from being into sort of this spin? If you're in the emotional spin, or the mental spin, or the physical spin, you're not being. You're moving. You're in the spinning, and maybe vanity. Let's just say, for example, vanity of the body is talking about, oh, I wish I was younger. It's the past, or I hate getting older. It's the future. So you're spinning out there. The vanity of emotion is you're spinning into, this one. It's this judgment. It's this one's fault. It's you're doing this to me, and you always do that, and this again, future, past. And the mental is even, if you want to look for mental spins, they're everywhere. They all deny consciousness, right?
It's all control systems. It's understanding control systems are a foundational part of one's ego, one's mental manipulation of your world. When you have not figured out what's inside of you.
Well, I like, though, when you're talking about consciousness, and maybe we're getting a little bit back towards Tolle, all these spins, the emotional spins he talks about mental spins, and he doesn't really talk about physical, but it may be just in both of those for him. When you come back into consciousness, it does not only underlie but encompass them all. And as you said, you can manage all of these things by realizing that they are all on top of, or certainly cannot exist without, consciousness. If you come back to consciousness, to existence, and to being, and again being in the moment, being in the now, then you know that this emotional vanity is just a big emotional spin that does nothing. It will go away. We just give it, maybe you have to give it space for a little bit. Right?
It's a process. It's accepting the fact that all life is process. And if you're down, you will be up. And if you're up, you will be down. It is a point of understanding that your consciousness holds center regardless of what's going on, and to touch into that which is, was, and always will be. That's the constancy that people are looking for.
So if we say that vanities are all these things, and the vanity of vanities, all is vanity, what pierces vanity is the being state of now, and realizing that, when we talk about vanity, we make ourselves this outsized balloon, that we're the most important thing in the universe, and that everything has to relate to us, and our physical being, our mental being, everything. Consciousness pierces all that. Consciousness realizes that now is important. That the physical doesn't rule you. The mental doesn't rule you. It's not you, actually, and the emotional doesn't rule you. The you of the now you is the absolute opposite of vanity.
Yes. It is something that is undeniable. And when you accept what is true, what is the truth, that becomes your foundation for your being state. And everything else is eddies, ebb and flow of different types of energy.
So is it as simple? Maybe this is oversimplified. Is it as simple as detecting that the falseness of these things is the way to recognize them? That they're not being states. They don't have the truth of being. They have the falseness of vanity. And
well, that's if you're trying to train your mind to recognize it. But I think internally, your compass is here in your
right.
in your state of being, your heart. You know when something is true.
And I think that in this state, there's no room for vanity. It is completely excluded in the now.
There's no such thing as, once you are abiding in your truth, you actually know who you really are, and you're in touch not only with your soul, because your soul is only a level. There is also soul vanity, which we didn't even touch.
Darn it. Go ahead.
But when you come into the eternal spirit and the being state, consciousness is so solid and just bright, a bright flame, and you come to abide in that, that's when you really begin to take steps into you and coming home.
There you go. Well, let's bring this home. So, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. We have exhausted our hour, and so in a being state of now, I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.